There is a very specific kind of loneliness that happens when you're technically connected to someone, but you're living on crumbs. You get a message here and there, a little warmth when they feel like it, a quick check-in that disappears as soon as you start to relax. Just enough to keep you attached, not enough to make you feel safe. And over time, you start calling that connection because it's easier than admitting what it really is. An inconsistent drip of attention that keeps you emotionally hungry. When you've been stuck in this long enough, the most dangerous part isn't even what they're doing. It's what you start doing to yourself. You start lowering your standards without naming it as lowering. You start treating basic respect like a bonus. You start feeling grateful for the bare minimum. You start shrinking your needs so you don't risk losing the little access you have. And then you wonder why your self-worth feels unstable, why your nervous system won't settle, why you can't fully exhale. It's because your body knows the truth, even when your mind is trying to make it sound nicer. Breadcrumbs don't create connection. Breadcrumbs create anticipation. And anticipation is not intimacy. It's a waiting room. So if you want to stop accepting breadcrumbs and calling it connection, the first thing you need is not more willpower. You need clarity. You need to see the pattern for what it is, without romanticizing it, without blaming yourself, and without needing them to confess anything. Because the pattern is usually simple. You're being fed just enough to stay attached, but not enough to feel chosen. And that kind of bond becomes addictive because it mixes hope with deprivation. When you get a little warmth after a period of distance, it hits like relief. It feels like proof. It feels like the relationship is alive. But what you're actually feeling is your nervous system coming down from anxiety. You're not being loved in a stable way. You're being soothed temporarily. And temporary soothing can keep you stuck for years if you confuse it with devotion. Breadcrumbs look like inconsistent effort, vague promises, sudden intimacy followed by withdrawal. I miss you, with no follow-through. Affection with no clarity. Attention that spikes when they sense you pulling away. Breadcrumbs can even look thoughtful on the surface, but the deeper signature is always the same. It never builds. It never deepens. It never stabilizes. It never becomes a place you can rest. It keeps you alert. And the reason it works on you is because you're probably someone who loves fully. You interpret small gestures as potential. You read between the lines. You focus on what they could be, not what they consistently are. You give meaning to moments. And that's beautiful in the right relationship. In the wrong relationship, it becomes a trap. Because breadcrumbs are designed to keep you investing without requiring them to commit. They get access to your heart while keeping their freedom intact. And if you're honest, you felt that imbalance. You felt the way you're the one waiting. You're the one adjusting. You're the one trying to be chill. You're the one telling yourself not to ask for too much. And slowly, you start training yourself to accept less than what you'd ever want for someone you love. That's where it becomes dangerous. Not because you're weak, but because your hope becomes a leash. So let's name the two illusions that keep you accepting breadcrumbs. The first illusion is that if you're patient enough, they will eventually become consistent. You keep telling yourself, they just need time. They're busy. They're stressed. They're figuring it out. And sometimes those things are true. But here is the reality that protects you. Time does not create capacity. Time reveals capacity. If someone has the ability and desire to show up, you feel it. You don't have to decode it. You don't have to interpret it. You don't have to beg it out of them. The second illusion is that you have to earn connection by being easy. You start believing that if you ask for consistency, you'll scare them away. If you ask for clarity, you'll look needy. If you ask for reciprocity, you'll ruin it. But the truth is the opposite. If asking for basic connection ruins it, it wasn't connection. It was a situation where your silence was the price of access. And that price is too high. When you stop accepting breadcrumbs, you're not becoming demanding. You're becoming honest about what your heart needs to feel safe. And you're refusing to call anxiety chemistry. You're refusing to call scarcity value. You're refusing to call crumbs love. This is the shift. You stop measuring connection by moments, and you start measuring it by patterns.
A moment can be beautiful. A pattern is what you live in. A moment is a spark. A pattern is a home. Breadcrumb relationships are full of moments and empty of homes. So you start asking one calm question. Do I feel emotionally safe here? Not excited, not hopeful, not relieved when they finally respond. Safe. Safe means you're not constantly bracing. Safe means you're not constantly waiting. Safe means you're not constantly doubting your place. Safe means you can speak without fear of punishment. Safe means you can need something without being shamed. If the answer is no, then you're not in connection, you're in pursuit. And pursuit will drain you until you forget who you are. Another thing to understand is that breadcrumbs are often not accidental. Some people unconsciously use them because they fear intimacy but fear losing you. They want your presence without the responsibility that comes with being a real partner. Others use them consciously as control. They know that a little attention keeps you invested. They know that uncertainty keeps you focused. And you don't need to diagnose their intentions to protect yourself. You just need to notice the outcome. The outcome is that you feel unstable. You feel on edge. You feel like you can't fully relax. You feel like you're constantly trying to read the room. And love is not supposed to feel like monitoring. Love is not supposed to feel like guessing. Love is not supposed to be a puzzle you solve to earn a seat at the table. The most painful part of breadcrumb dynamics is that they can make you question your standards. You start thinking, maybe this is what dating is like. Maybe everyone is like this. Maybe you're the problem for wanting more. But no. There are people who show up. There are people who are consistent. There are people who don't make you beg for basic clarity. There are people who don't leave you floating for days and then act like nothing happened. The reason you may not believe that is because you've been trained by this dynamic to accept uncertainty as normal. And when uncertainty becomes normal, stability can feel boring at first. That's how deep this conditioning goes. Your nervous system starts associating love with anxiety and calm with emptiness. And that's why walking away from breadcrumbs can feel like withdrawal. You might miss them. You might crave them. You might feel tempted to reach out. That does not mean they were right for you. That means your system bonded to scarcity. Scarcity is addictive, not because it's good, but because it makes every small win feel huge. So the moment you decide to stop calling breadcrumbs connection, you will likely feel discomfort. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're breaking a pattern that kept you hooked. Here is the calm truth you need. You cannot heal your self-worth in a dynamic that requires you to accept less to keep it alive.
You can't rebuild dignity while you're constantly negotiating for the basics. You can't feel secure while you're constantly being fed unpredictably. So the way you stop accepting breadcrumbs is not by giving them a lecture. It's by changing what you reward. Breadcrumbs survive when they still get access, when they still get your attention, your warmth, your emotional labor, your availability, your loyalty, your body, your time, while they keep offering partial presence. So you start moving differently. You stop rushing toward the little crumbs like they're proof of love. You stop giving big energy to small effort. You stop treating inconsistency like a temporary phase and start treating it as information. You stop romanticizing the potential and start respecting the pattern. And you stop making excuses for someone who keeps showing you the same limit. This doesn't have to be harsh. It can be quiet. It can be elegant. It can be you simply refusing to build a life around someone who keeps you uncertain. Because this is what breadcrumb relationships steal from you: your time, your focus, your peace. The person becomes the main storyline, and your life becomes the waiting room. And one day you realize you've been waiting for someone to become a person they have never consistently been. That's the moment you reclaim yourself. You are allowed to want a connection that grows. You are allowed to want someone who follows through. You are allowed to want a love that doesn't punish you with silence. You are allowed to want consistency without feeling like you're asking for too much. Consistency is not too much. It's the minimum requirement for safety. If you keep having to explain why you deserve consistency, that is not a love story. That is a negotiation where your needs are treated as a problem. And your heart was not meant to live inside a problem. Your heart was meant to be held. So here is what changes when you stop accepting breadcrumbs.
Your identity changes. You stop being the person who waits. You stop being the person who understands everything. You stop being the person who keeps the connection alive alone. You become the person who is only available for mutuality. And mutuality is not a mystery. Mutuality is effort that meets effort, presence that meets presence, clarity that meets clarity. It's being chosen in a way that feels steady, not accidental. It's being cared for without having to earn it by suffering quietly. When you make this shift, the old dynamic will try to pull you back. Breadcrumb givers often show up the moment they feel you detaching. Suddenly they remember you. Suddenly they text. Suddenly they say they miss you. Suddenly they become warm. Not always because they've changed, but because they sense they're losing control of your attention. This is where you need one clean standard. You don't respond to spikes. You respond to patterns. A spike of attention is not a new relationship. It's often a reset of the old one. So you breathe, you observe, you let time reveal the truth. People who are consistent don't need crisis to show up. They show up because that's who they are. And if this video leaves you with one quiet realization, let it be this: you don't miss crumbs because they were nourishing. You miss crumbs because you were hungry. And you don't have to stay hungry to prove you can endure. You're allowed to leave the table when you're being starved. You're allowed to choose a life where connection feels like peace, not pursuit. You're allowed to stop translating neglect into love. You're allowed to stop calling anxiety chemistry. You're allowed to stop calling crumbs enough. Because you were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person for the right thing.
Welcome to Attachment Alchemy Lab. You're safe here.